Hello, guys, and good day to all of you. Today, we are going to have our very first lecture here at Business Communication or TOUR1. For today's topic, I think this is something that is very easy because this is something that you already know, and maybe a lot of you have learned this already back in your previous classes in high school or in senior high school. So basically, this will serve as a review of our topic for today. So our topic for today is the overview of business communication process. So siguro back in senior high or back in high school, iba yung overview, ibang communication process yung diniscuss ninyo. Maybe ang tawag nila dito was oral communication process or maybe speech communication process. However, when we say communication process, they pretty much share the same elements. They pretty much share the same information. Medyo may mga nag-iiba lang ng konti when it comes to the purpose. Okay? So today, we are going to focus on business communication process. So, first and foremost, ano ba yung communication? Okay? Communication, in general, it is a successful exchange of information from one person to another in order to deliver a message. Okay? So, when we say communication process, we can either communicate using verbal communication or non-verbal. So, when we say verbal, basically, it brings the aspect of language. We use words. We use language to communicate. While nonverbal, on the other hand, we supplement words with gestures. Okay, so we don't use words. We don't use language. We use pretty much everything else but language. So this includes gestures, or signs, or facial expressions, etc., etc. Okay? Communication process consists of different elements. Okay? Based on this picture na nakikita nyo ngayon, how many elements of communication process can you see? Okay. There's source, there's encoding, channel, decoding, receiver. Tapos yung MSG, that stands for message. Hindi siya yung inihahalo sa pagkain na MSG. That's message. And then feedback and context. So basically, communication process consists of 8 elements. At ito yung mga yon. Okay? Let's start with the first one, which is the source, or we can also call it sender, or some books call it speaker. So either one is correct. You can either answer sender, source, and or speaker, and they're all correct. So when we say a source, the source is the person who is sending the message. Okay, the origin, or the one who is conveying the message to another person. A good sender should be clear about the message he or she is transmitting and must know the purpose of communication. Okay, so once again, when we say sender, this is the source or the speaker of the message. Next element is the message itself. When we say message, this is the idea or the information that you want to communicate in writing, in speech, or by signals. So message basically is the content of what is being communicated. Next element is encoding. Okay, from sender, the sender has to encode the message. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng encoding? It is the process of taking your message and transferring it into the right format for sharing it with the receiver. So ini-encode nung sender yung message para ma-receive nung taong kinakausap niya in an effective manner. Okay? Channel or medium, this is the method that we use to convey the message or the mode of delivery. So, paano ba natin i-deliver yung message? Is it through face-to-face? Personal ba? or maybe it's through telephone conversation, or through email, through instant messaging, or through text messaging, or pwedeng sign language. So whatever is the mode of delivery, kung ano man ang pinili ni sender na mode kung paano i-deliver yung message, this is what we call the channel of communication, or the medium that we use to communicate the message to the receiver. Speaking of the receiver is the person or persons receiving the message, understanding or translating it into meaning. So, kung sino man yung kinakausap ni sender at kung sino man ang nakikinig, whoever is listening or absorbing the message, that is what we call the sender. And it is the sender's responsibility to decode the message. Ano ba yung decoding? It is how the receiver is able to understand and interpret the message, or it is the process of interpretation and translation of coded information into a comprehensible form. Okay, so kanina kung yung encoding is the responsibility of the sender, decoding on the other hand is the responsibility of the receiver. Paano ba inabsorb ni receiver yung message? Okay, and that process is what we call decoding. Feedback is the response of a receiver to a sender's message. It allows the sender to adjust or improve his message and be more effective. Sometimes a feedback could be a non-verbal smiles, sighs, etc. Sometimes it is oral, as when you react to a colleague's ideas with questions or comments, and feedback can also be written. So hindi ibig sabihin porket verbal yung message sa'yo, dapat verbal din yung feedback. No, it doesn't go that way. Pwedeng yung feedback, pwedeng smile lang, pwedeng thumbs up, pwedeng tatango-tango ka lang, di ba? So, an example, if your boss tells you, hey, I would like you to do this report and I want you to do it now. And yung feedback mo could be, ganun lang. So, hindi naman ibig sabihin pag verbal din feedback. It could be anything. Now let's talk about context. Context is the part in communication that includes the environment, culture, or relationship between the sender and the receiver. So, ang conversation ng iba't ibang tao, nagkakaiba-iba yung context, depende sa environment at saka sa relationship ng sender and receiver. For example, ang context ng conversation ng isang boss at saka isang employee ay iba sa context ng dalawang magkaibigan. Okay? So, iba yung context ng conversation nila because yung boss and employee medyo siguro formal, dignified yung conversation nila. While on the other hand, yung dalawang magkaibigan, pwedeng may biruan, may harutan ng konti. So, magkaiba yung context. So, it has something to do with the culture or relationship as well as the environment between the sender and the receiver. So those are the 8 different elements of the communication process. So kailangan kumpleto lahat yung 8 na yun to complete the whole process. Otherwise, we cannot call it a process if something is missing. Now that the review of the communication process is finished, let's talk about the different levels of communication. Basically, there are 5 different levels of communication: intrapersonal, interpersonal, small group communication, public communication, and mass communication. So, ano ba yung levels? It has something to do with the number of people involved in the communication process. When we say intrapersonal communication, this is communicating with yourself. Okay? You talk with, learn about, and evaluate yourself. Talking to yourself is not a crazy behavior. You are just simply engaging in intrapersonal communication. This is perfectly normal and necessary. Sir, paano yun? Sinong sender? Eh di ikaw. Sinong receiver? Eh di ikaw din kasi you are talking to yourself. And that's what we call intrapersonal communication. We do this every day. Okay? Huwag niyo sasabihin na hindi kayo nakikipag-usap sa sarili ninyo kasi hindi ako maniniwala. Before we can talk to somebody, iniisip muna natin yung sasabihin natin. At yung process na pag-iisip na yon, that is what we call intrapersonal communication. Bago ko sabihin itong lecture, bago ko i-discuss itong lecture na ito sa inyo, iniisip ko muna sa sarili ko, I am engaging myself in intrapersonal communication so that I can deliver the message to you guys. So, once again, this is perfectly normal and it is necessary kasi imposibleng converse or communicate ka with another person if you are not going to communicate with yourself first. And that is what we call intrapersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is when you communicate with another person. So, dalawang tao ang nag-uusap dito. It is through interpersonal communication that you establish, maintain, restore, and or end relationships. At this level of communication, you learn about others and hopefully you learn about yourself as well. Or simply you reveal yourself to others. So when we say interpersonal communication, dalawang tao nag-uusap. So sender and the receiver. Tapos kapag sumagot and they switch roles basically. So dalawang tao, it could be two friends or two classmates na naglalakad along the corridors of the school, or it could be dalawang co-workers na nag-uusap about some things about their job, or it could be an employer and an employee talking about something that is related to their job as well. So dalawang tao ang nag-usap, and that process at that level is called interpersonal communication. Ano naman yung small group? Okay, your small group, you share your ideas and information with 3 to 15 persons or 3 to 15 people. It is usually done in order to come up with a decision or help solve problems. Small group communication generally takes place in a context that mixes interpersonal communication interactions with social clustering. So, sir, dun sa between 3 to 15 people na yon, sino yung sender at saka sino ang receiver? Isang tao lang ba ang sender? No, the answer is no. Dun sa, for example, 10 taong nag-uusap, anybody could be a sender. Anybody could be a receiver. So, bawat isa pwedeng magsalita. Bawat isa pwedeng mag-convey ng message. So, ano yung mga examples ng small group communication? It could be brainstorming or conference or meeting na kung saan is lahat is bibigay ng kanilang inputs. So, yun yung small group. Sir, bakit hanggang 15 people ang small group? Kasi hanggang doon lang yung effectivity niya. Kapag sumobra ng 15, according to communication experts, kapag sumobra ng 15, medyo mahirap nang i-absorb yung messages with more than 15 people. So 15 is basically the maximum number of people so that small group communication can be done effectively. Public communication, on the other hand, is described as communication by one speaker to a live audience. Purposes of public communication are to entertain, to persuade, and or to inform. So, sa public communication, isa lang ang speaker. And yung audience niya could be any number. Pwedeng 3, pwedeng 5, pwedeng 10, pwedeng 100, 1,000, pwedeng 1,000,000. As long as it's live, kaharap ng speaker yung kaniyang audience. Alright? So, that is what we call public communication. Example of this will be a a teacher inside a classroom talking to his or her students, okay, doing a discussion with the class. Or it could be President Duterte delivering his speech sa harap ng audience. That is public communication also. Pwede namang isang politician na nangangampanya sa meeting de avance kaharap ng maraming tao, sinasabing iboto nyo ako. That is public communication. Gets nyo? So live audience, okay, one speaker, live audience, that is public communication. Okay. Ano naman yung mass communication at ano ang pinagkaiba niya sa public communication? Mass communication is communication to extremely large audience that is usually mediated by audio and or visual means. Purposes are also to entertain, to persuade, and or to inform. Media and technology are used to reach a large audience. So ano ang main difference ng public communication sa mass communication? Public is live. Okay? Live siya. Kaharap nung nagsasalita yung mga kausap niya. Mass communication, pwedeng live pa rin pero hindi siya face-to-face. Once again, media and technology are used to reach a large audience. Ano ba yung mga different media or mass media na ginagamit natin sa mass communication? Television. Okay, number one. So, for example, si Noli Di Castro is nagde-deliver ng news sa TV Patrol sa TV. That is mass communication. So, TV. Pwede rin namang radio. So, yung DJ, si DJ Sky, ay nagkikipag-usap sa kaniyang audience over the radio. So, that is also mass communication. So, what else? Print media. Okay, so newspapers, magazines, lahat ng mga articles and magazine articles na sinusulat ng iba't ibang journalists and writers to communicate to a large audience. That is also part of mass communication. And another type of media, mass media, is ito yung pinakasikat, the internet. Okay, so yung mga bloggers at vloggers dyan. So this is a form of mass communication as well. So once again, ano ulit yung mga different mass media na ginagamit for mass communication? It could be television, radio, print media, and then the internet. So there you go. Those are the 5 levels of communication. Once again, what are those? Intrapersonal, interpersonal, small group, public communication, and mass communication. Okay. Now, down to our last topic for today. What are the purposes of business communication? Siguro sa previous classes ninyo about communication, you have learned that the purposes of oral communication or speech communication, for example, are to inform, to persuade, to entertain. Business communication, medyo may slight difference. The purposes of business communication are as follows. Number 1 is to inform. When you inform, you explain something or tell an audience something. To persuade, when you request or persuade, you want the audience to act. The word request suggests that the action will be easy or routine. Persuade suggests that you will have to motivate and convince the audience to act. At ito yung pinagkaiba ng business communication. The third purpose of business communication is to build goodwill. When you build goodwill, you create a good image of yourself and of your organization. The kind of image that makes people want to do business with you. So once again, ito yung slight difference ng purposes ng business communication kasi nga we are focusing on business, we are focusing on work related professional environment. So to entertain, hindi siya medyo swak doon sa business communication. That's why we replaced it with to build goodwill instead. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our first lecture in business communication. So I hope you have learned something new, or maybe you have remembered something that you have learned before. And I would like to thank you for taking time to watch this video. If you have any concerns or questions, please feel free to message me, and I will give you an answer as soon as I can. Once again, thank you and see ya.